Hello friends, welcome to part 4 of our Python for Gen AI and LLM series. Uh, in this video, we will cover the data types in Python. So we have already set up a Visual Studio code and we have installed Anaconda and we have created an environment for ourselves, and then one by one we are going through the different basics of Python. So if you want a link on how you can install Visual Studio Code and Anaconda on your system, I will leave the link on the top right side in the card. So you can just click on that link if you want to refer to that video. So what are data types? That's what we are going to cover in this video. And then we'll touch base on basic data types which are there, including integer, float, boolean, string, and complex. And then there are also advanced data types. So advanced data types include lists, tuples, sets, and dictionaries. We will just touch base on them. We'll not go into the details of advanced data types in this video. And then we'll also touch base on how you can convert one type of data into another type of data. We have already did it in our earlier video, but then we can probably refresh it quickly. So in Python, data types are used to define the type of value a variable holds. So this is basically the value of the variable that you define. And Python is dynamically typed, so which means you don't need to declare the data type explicitly, but Python will figure out for you automatically. They also determine the memory a variable will hold. So for an example, an integer will hold less memory space compared to a float, right? So that will be defined on the type of the data and what kind of operations you can perform on this variable. So these two things are determined by the type of the data. And the main data types are covered here in this slide. So integer is like a whole number. You can see an example like 42 is an integer, 100 is an integer, 500 is an integer, and so on. But if there is a decimal component included, right, it becomes a floating point number because it has decimal and it has some numbers after that. And then we also have a data type by the name of complex. Typically, we need not use complex in our AI and LLMs related work, but since they process real-time data, you should be aware that there is a data type called complex. It's typically used in use cases like signal processing or designing control system, etc. So that will have two components, real and imaginary part. And then we have Boolean data type. So Boolean data type can only have two values, either true or false. And then we have string. A string is a sequence of characters, right? Like hello is a string or word is a string. So it's basically just a string of characters. And then we also have advanced data types. So advanced data types include lists, tuples, set, and dictionary. So lists are ordered mutable collection of different items. Tuple, again, it's ordered, but it's a immutable collection of items. Set is a unordered collection of unique items, and dictionary is key value pairs, right? So we use dictionaries a lot in Python. So you will come to that. But in this section, we'll not cover these advanced data types as such. And then we also have a none type, right? So none type represents a null value, which means there is no value that is assigned to the data type. Now let's go to our Visual Studio Code and we'll see the example of some of these things here. So here is our VS Code. First, let me just put a markdown mentioning what are the data types in Python, and let me hit enter. So let me just paste the details, the definition of data types in Python, and I will put a copy of it on the GitHub link that I'll leave in the description. So let me just do a control enter here, and then let's try to test some data types. So let's start with integer. Let me add a code block here, and I'll say example of an integer, and let me hit enter. And let's create a integer data type here. I'll create a variable again, voter underscore age equal to 18, right? And then let me hit enter, and let's see the type of this voter age variable. What data type does it hold? So I'll say print, and then I'll use a bracket, and then I'll say type, and then I'll say voter age, and let me hit enter. So you can see the class is shown as the integer. Okay, let's go to our second example. We'll use the example of a float. So that's the example of a float, and here let me hit enter, and I'll say voter age equal to 18.0, or rather take a different example. I'll say voter height is equal to and then I can give a value, maybe uh, I'll say 5 foot 9 inches, and then I'll say print type voter height, right? Okay, let me do a control enter, and you can see that this class is showing as float. So I have created a complete series on Python. That's what we are doing with each of our video. And here is a link on the top right side. I have left a card link, so you can click on this if you want to start from the beginning. Next, let's talk about example of a string. So I'll just create another code block, and I'll say example of a string. And here I'll just give voter name, and let me put my name, that is Kumar AS, and I'll hit enter. And then I'll say print type voter name, and let me do a control enter, right? So you can see the class of this data type is string. Okay, so we'll go to our next example, and in next one we'll take example of a boolean. So I'll say example of a boolean, and here I can say voter underscore eligibility equal to true, right? So remember, we are using snake case here, right? Voter underscore eligible equal to true, and then I'll say print type voter eligible, and let's see what is the output. So you can see the class is showing as the bool, so it is a boolean data type. Now next, let's just try to compare two different data types. So you can perform multiple operations between data types, but before that, maybe we can try with a none data type, right? So I'll say example of none, right? And here I'll say voter underscore ID equal to none, right? So none, you can assign it as a value, but it basically means that there is no value. And that's what is called none data type. And then I'll just do a tap, and here I will do control enter. And you can see the class is showing us none type, right? So none type means there is no value assigned. And then let's before we move forward, let's also talk about complex data types. So let me just create a new code block for complex data type. So I'll say example of complex number, right? And here I can say voter underscore complex equal to 3 plus 4j. So it uses a real and imaginary component. So 3 is the real number and 4j is the imaginary component of that number. And then I'll say print type voter underscore complex, and let me enter it. So you can see it showing the class as complex, right? Now we'll hardly use complex in our series. We'll see if the need arises actually. But for now, you can just understand that there is a data type that's called complex. It's basically used in signaling, in control systems, etc. Next, let's try to perform some operations. So I have a separate video that I am planning to make for operations. That will probably be our next video. But here we can try to touch base on some of the example of operators, right? So let me create two variables with the integer data type. I'll say Kumar underscore age, and then I'll say 18, and then I'll say Abhishek underscore age, and here I'll put the value as 20. And then let's say I want to compare both of these values, right? So what I'll say, I'll do Kumar underscore age, and then I will use equal to. That is a comparison operator that will tell if two different variables are same value or they have a different value, right? So here I'll say Kumar age double equal to Abhishek age, right? So the output should be a false, right? And then I'll say um, enter, right? So you can see the output as false. So this comparison has resulted in a result of a boolean that says false. So next we'll try sum between two different operators. So let me just say here, let's try to do a sum of two different variables, right? So I'll say um, voter name is equal to Kumar, and then let me hit enter. And here I'll say voter underscore age equal to 18, right? And then what I'll try to do is let me try to do a addition of these two. So I'll say sum underscore value equal to voter underscore name plus voter underscore age, voter underscore age, right? And let me try to print the value of the outcome. So I'll say print some value, right? So here I'll say some underscore value, and then let me do a control enter. So you can see it has resulted in an error. Now you can perform an operator only uh, between the variables that can be added, right? So a string and a numeric value cannot be added, right? That's why we are getting this error. Now if we want it to be successful, what we need to do is I can use double quote for 18, and then it should be able to successfully add, because these are two strings, right? So if I do a control enter now, you can see that these two have been concatenated and the output is a string, that is Kumar 18, right? So that's what I wanted to cover in this session. These are the basic data types. We will discuss advanced data types in a different section. And what I will do is I will upload this file on GitHub, and I will leave a link in the description of this video. So that's it for this video. Please make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel, and also press the bell icon so whenever I upload a video you will get a notification.